Ferrari started off its 2022 campaign with a bang, as Charles Leclerc quickly rose to the top of the driver's standings. But it's only been a downhill journey since. In fact, things got so bad that we even heard rumors about Mattia Binotto being sacked. Is there any truth to these reports though? In today's video, we're going to talk about Ferrari's official response and why they fell off midway through the season. So keep watching. First off, Ferrari denies reports about Binotto's sacking. It's been the strangest of seasons for the Scuderia, as they've seen themselves tumbling down the order for no particular reason. Like, even if your development doesn't go as well as the other guys on the grid, you don't just go from winning the Grand Prix to barely getting on the podium within a few months. That's been the story for them though, with bad strategy calls, engine reliability issues, and just general mismanagement. And guess who's getting the blame for their fall? Yep, it's the team boss, Mattia Binotto. Now, he's been at Ferrari for a very long time. Oh, and we mean really long, even before the Schumacher era. Still, his reign at the top hasn't been fruitful for the Maranello outfit at all. So, before the season even finished, we started hearing rumblings about his sacking. In fact, the reports were so prevalent on social media that the team actually had to put out a statement denying them. In its statement published on Twitter, the team basically said that the rumors about Binotto's position in the team are quote-unquote totally without foundation. Seems like a definitive denial, right? Well, as it turns out, this saga goes way deeper than that, cause guess what? The guy who was supposed to replace the Italian, Vasseur, let's just say that we didn't hear much from his side. Up next, a strained relationship with Leclerc sparked Binotto rumors. If you're a Ferrari fan at this point, you probably deserve some compensation for the mental turmoil you've been through by just watching them this season. Seriously, it's been an incredibly frustrating season for the Scuderia, and the Tifosi aren't the only ones mad at the situation. As a matter of fact, we've seen their top driver Charles Leclerc increasingly lose his sanity over his team's baffling decisions throughout the season too. And it's almost as if there's an imposter in the team trying to sabotage every single race. Also, we don't even have to go far to find an example. Literally, pick any race and you'll find something egregious. The weekend in Brazil, for instance. The track was mildly wet, sure, but it wasn't wet enough for intermediate tires. So guess what the Maranello outfit did? Of course, they sent the Monegasque out on a pair of inters, while literally every other driver was on softs. Obviously, he finished P10 behind everyone else in Q3 and had some pretty harsh words for his team too. That said, this has been the theme for them this year, and apparently, it's resulted in a strange relationship between Leclerc and his team boss. Now, reports claim that they did sort it out over dinner, but still, sometimes it's hard to recover from these things. Guess who doesn't have a bad relationship with Leclerc though? Yep, it's Alfa Romeo boss Vasseur who mentored the 25-year-old during his rookie season in the sport. So this move makes perfect sense in terms of appeasing their drivers. What's more, Binotto isn't a new figure at Ferrari. One of the biggest arguments that critics bring against Binotto is the fact that he's taken the team downhill ever since his takeover from Mauricio Arrivabene. But if you look at their stats, the opposite is true. Like, not only has the Italian been instrumental in making the team competitive again, but he's also led a massive cultural change at the outfit. Carlos Sainz has even spoken up about how refreshing it is to see people not losing their jobs over a bunch of decisions for once. Still, it'd also be fair to criticize Binotto for denying that there's anything wrong with his team. For instance, he said time and time again throughout the season that they weren't aiming for the championship this season. Oh, and we're not even going to talk about his claims about winning the final 10 races this year. So, it's been a bit all over the place for him. That said, it's perhaps not fair to put the entirety of the blame on him. After all, he's not in charge of strategy. Plus, we've got to remember, this guy's been in the team since the 90s and has been responsible for a lot of their success during the early 2000s. Sure, he's probably not as cunning as someone like Toto Wolff or Christian Horner, but hey, at least the team is still mildly competitive, right? Well, some would argue that they don't even belong in that conversation anymore, as Mercedes continues to catch up in the Constructors' Championship. Not to mention, Vasseur is a very competent team boss. Alright, so let's assume that Ferrari is gonna sack Mattia Binotto eventually. Is the new guy coming in actually better? Well, apparently, yes. You see, Vasseur's been a part of Sauber's setup since 2018, and we've seen the team progress rapidly since. In fact, they've got one of the best wind tunnel facilities on the grid right now, which is part of the reason why Audi's buying them out. Plus, since Sauber and Alfa Romeo are a part of the Stellantis group of companies alongside Ferrari, he's got a relationship there too. The most important one, however, is his closeness problems with Leclerc, who's arguably the team's best chance of winning a world title. Like, the Frenchman was the guy who brought the Monegasque into the sport. Oh, and the 25-year-old's been full of praise for him too. For instance, back in 2018, he said that Fred is very direct and knows how to speak to people and motivate a team. Besides, if he does get the job, that'll be the first time Scuderia would have a Frenchman at the helm since, yep, Jean Todt. And we all know how incredible that era was for them. Now, the reason behind Ferrari's slow development in 2022. The Scuderia was the team to beat at the start of the season, as Charles Leclerc pulled a 40-point lead within the first few races. But in recent weeks, the team has fallen so far down the pecking order that even a Mercedes is now ahead of them. So what happened during the year? Did they just lose their pace? Well, as it turns out, they just had to stop bringing upgrades to the car over the second half of the season. Now, of course, we've all noticed this change. Still, the assumption was that they'd already started to divert resources to next year's car. After all, they weren't going to challenge for the title anyway. That's not the actual reason though. The real thing is much funnier than that cause, according to Mattia Binotto, they just reached the budget cap. Speaking to the press in Brazil, the Ferrari team boss confirmed that they'd already hit the $144 million spending ceiling for the season, so they couldn't really bring any new parts to significantly impact their performance. Coming up, wasn't Ferrari more flexible at the start of the season? Obviously, there's nothing inherently wrong with reaching your budget cap and halting upgrades. After all, that's the whole point of the financial regulations, so other teams can catch up. But the weird thing about the Scuderia is the fact that they literally had the opposite strategy at the start of the season. In fact, back in May, Binotto even went so far as to say that he's not concerned about Red Bull's pace, because he knows that they'd have to stop development due to the budget cap. So at that point, his Maranello team could step in and continue to develop the car for a longer stretch of the campaign to gain the upper hand. Now, something's gone terribly wrong here for them to end up in this position. Perhaps it's the number of engine failures they've had, or maybe it's just bad planning. Still, the fact of the matter is that they got beaten at their own game by Red Bull, which probably doesn't inspire much confidence heading into next year. Finally, Binotto ensures no budget cuts for 2023. When you hear about Ferrari's budget cap woes this season, the obvious next question is, does this also affect next season's car? Thankfully though, the team boss also confirmed that no, they didn't compromise the development of next year's car at all. In fact, if anything, this allowed them to shift focus on the follow-up to the F175. So it's all good on that front. Or is it? Well, if there's anything we've learned over the past few years, it's that you never know what's going to happen with Ferrari. They've easily been the most unpredictable team on the grid, and no one can judge whether they'll turn up as the fastest car or not. What's more, even if they do start the season off, who's saying it won't go downhill as it did this year? The only thing we can do is cross our fingers and hope for the best. That's a wrap for this video. Do you think Ferrari should replace Binotto with Vasseur? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.